The Animals' Eric Burdon on the Beatles, The Animals' Breakup, the British Invasion, and House of the Rising Sun. In an interview with Disc Weekly in 1965, Eric Burdon discusses his working-class upbringing in Newcastle and attending art school where he met drummer John Steele. While performing at a rock dance, they saw Alan Price playing and invited him to join their band. They originally called themselves the Pagan Jazzmen. Eric Burdon was sharing a flat with guitarist Hilton Valentine in Earls Court at the time. When asked about his favourite groups, Eric Burdon had this to say: "It must be the Beatles. Musically, they have so much talent, and they're such nice fellows. They have never let fame go to their heads. They opened the way for everyone in America. We would never have got there but for the Beatles. Paul and John are tremendously talented as composers. We would like to do some of their material, but people would be bound to be critical if we recorded Beatles songs. But we would love to record a song like Love Me Do, for instance."
Lonnie Donegan, who was an Irish-Scottish Jew who sang a Depression song by Woody Guthrie, which didn't mean a thing to us, but got on the charts. We had our folk revival before you had yours, but it wasn't a revival of English folk. It was a revival of American folk.
Like the Beatles, a good many of the English rockers of the 60s developed the first calluses on their guitar-picking fingers picking skiffle. Eric Burdon.
We had a small, sort of like skiffle-type group at one period before we started the Animals off. And there was one song which I used to really enjoy singing.
There is a house down in New Orleans.
And I used to always remember singing it. And then I heard Bobby Dylan doing it. And I thought, I'd make a good single record, with a new arrangement. So we just worked on it, and we did it on the Chuck Berry tour. We toured with Chuck Berry.
A British tour.
And out of all the acts who were on the Chuck Berry tour, excepting Chuck, they were all out trying to rock each other, And we made the peak of our act, House of the Rising Sun, which was very soft and gentle. And it went down a storm, so we recorded it. And that was it.
Our house in New Orleans.
Well, if you listen to it now, you'll see why it took one take. It sounds like a one-take record, All of those early things did. And that's one of the reasons, actually, technically, how a lot of English groups sounded close to American blues. We were virtually doing the same as John Lee Hooker and Chuck Berry were doing it in a front room with a tape machine. And I think that's one of the big factors of how we got a really sort of basic, rough sound. If you listen to the Beatles' first LP, it really is damp and close. And sounds good, It's a good way to record something.
The Animals released their single Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood and are interviewed by the Record Mirror in February 1965. They discuss how R&B should be bigger, with Eric Burdon saying, "The R&B scene has not gotten as big as I hoped. There's been a lot of dilution. I believed all along that R&B would be very, very popular, and I was convinced that the Animals would make it." So, after the months of hints and rumours, it is all over for the Animals. They have split up, finished, as exclusively reported in Disc and Music Echo on July 30th. In September 1966, Eric Burdon is interviewed and asked about the recent breakup of the Animals and his future plans to form a new band. He responds, "We have ideas already about who we want, though of course I can't mention names, but they're members of established groups. I don't know yet how many we will need. The better the musicians, the smaller the band can be. And I haven't decided on a name for the band yet." Everyone's been talking about Eric Burdon and the Animals, but that would be stupid because everyone can see it's not the Animals. Burdon recorded his first solo single for release in Britain, Mama Told Me Not to Come, coupled with I Think It's Going to Rain Today. When asked about the record, he states, I think it stands a very good chance of making the chart. It's written by Randy Newman, a fantastic writer, and the lyrics are very good. Burdon was also asked about how his former bandmates felt about the breakup. They weren't too keen. Hilton tried to persuade us not to break up, but it was no good. Everybody was just slacking off. And Barry and I are the only two with a lot in common musically, so I invited him to join my band. Hilton's getting hung up on folk music. He worships Donovan, who doesn't figure to me. Dave's turned on by modern jazz and didn't improve the way I wanted to. What I want is a band I can mould and use ideas on without wondering if they will approve or agree with it. The communist cooperative setup didn't work with the Animals. Everything takes 5 times longer. We've been ligging around too much in this business. It's about time I settled down and did some work. The raves come to an end. Because if you don't work, especially the way the music business is today, you get left behind. I've been in the terrible position for the past 5 years of having to think for 5 people. Now I'm independent. If I make a mistake, then I'm to blame. And I don't feel so bad about it.
Sweet loving, bring it on home to me.
Although the band Burdon formed in the late 1960s was sometimes called Eric Burdon and the New Animals, it was not until 1998 that the name Eric Burdon and the New Animals was officially adopted. In a 2019 interview, Eric Burdon is asked about several topics, including the British invasion, America, Ed Sullivan, and House of the Rising Sun. On the British invasion and America, he says, "We always laughed at the notion of a British invasion, simply because it was just a catchphrase that Walter Cronkite, America's #1 anchorman at CBS, coined to put us all in one basket. So the British invasion had little to do with the music. There was no plot to storm America. That said, it was good for Americans to hear the music they'd invented, but now returned to them with a new passion. It was a sympathetic relationship that helped escalate awareness a bit. Some would say it was a musical renaissance. I think in many ways it opened people's minds and erased some barriers. For us, it was just a ticket out of Newcastle, out of the UK and off to the US. We were all just thrilled to be in the land where jazz, blues and rock and roll were born. In those days, a lot of the early greats had trouble making a living in the US, but found an eager audience in the UK. We simply returned the music to the place where it had come from. In a way, we helped show Americans the music that was being created in their own backyard. When Burdon was asked about what he remembers about recording House of the Rising Sun, he responds, "It was recorded in one take on our day off between tour dates, opening for our hero, Chuck Berry. We wanted one song to really set us apart from not only his sound, but the type of R&B people expected from the Animals. We heard the reaction from the crowd and knew we had a hit. The opening chords captivate you from the very start. The guitar part is one that every kid wants to play. It's not blues, it's not folk, it's not even rock. It's its own thing. It's the mounting sexual tension of the song, which I changed the point of view from the female to the male. Even before the Animals did it, it was a song that struck me. I heard it in folk clubs in Newcastle, and then I heard Bob Dylan's version on his first album. There's a reason why it has resonated with so many people for so long. The song itself is a tale of life gone wrong, with redemption in the end. It's an honest reflection of the tension of the time, which was actually very dark and moody, with a haunting melody that one never forgets. There are times when I think I'm tired of it, but then I hear those opening notes on the guitar. It's the one song that I have to perform every time, or I'd never make it out of the venue alive.
In this dirty old part of the city where the sun refused to shine.
He then goes on to describe what it was like performing on The Ed Sullivan Show multiple times. Ed was a good showman who knew how to please his audience, which was suddenly and disproportionately teenage girls. The screaming was over the top in that little theatre. which looked much bigger on television. If you didn't do his show, you weren't anybody. Watching those clips today, I have to say, they look hilariously ridiculous. When I look at the suits that we were wearing, and I look at my hair, it looks like a wig. I can't help but laugh.
My father was a soldier then, and times were very hard.
In December 2008, Eric Burdon lost a 3-year legal battle to use the name The Animals in the UK, with drummer John Steele owning the rights in the UK only. Then, in September 2013, Burdon won on appeal, with him then entitled to use the band's name in the UK. I'm guessing when these guys met in art school and formed their band in the early 60s, they could never have imagined that they would be in court against one another 50 years later.
Well, lawyers are everywhere. You know, they run the government, they operate the war machine, they tell soldiers when they can take a shot and when they can't. I mean, you just have to accept it. But, you know, we find a way around that. We're gonna steal songs left, right, and centre as much as we can. We're not gonna stop. It belongs to us.
Yeah.
It's ours. You know, rock and roll belongs to everybody.
There was a lot of hard rock stuff being sung. The Beatles were singing things like, "I wanna be your man, let me hold your hand." We had the Rolling Stones were doing all rock stuff, you know, Chuck Berry stuff. Everything was hard and solid. And the music suddenly went all trippy and dreamy and, you know, flowers that grow so incredibly high and, you know, Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Everything became much softer, much more hallucinogenic, trippy, dreamy. We're coming back again to the solidness. Everybody's getting themselves together again. You know, went through a complete facet of learning, you know. And it's just, you know, it must have been done some other way when my father was a kid. Maybe they did it by going to war, you know. I was talking to an air hostess who told me that she was on a line, TWA, which was flying soldiers to the front of Vietnam. And she would watch a platoon of soldiers together get on a plane. And when they got on the plane and they were on the way to Vietnam, they would be all, you know, getting as much booze down their throats as possible, all bragging about wanting to get into battle and fight it out, all trying to grab a hold of the hostess and things like that. Now she'd watch the same platoon on the way back after they'd experienced combat, on the way back to America, and they'd become men. They were dignified and quiet, and they shut up, and they behaved themselves, and they didn't say anything. The tools are there for communication, but we're not using them right. Television is being misused, radio is being misused, the movies have been misused. The movies in Hollywood, for instance, have told the biggest, dirtiest lie about America for the past 30 years. This is probably the greatest lie that mankind's ever told.
Then, and times were very hard when I was young.